Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we believe one thing. We all have a Shit Creek story. Now, today I want you to imagine that you're a pilot and the plane you're flying is suddenly plummeting towards the ground. You try everything you know to recover. You pull back, you fight the controls, you try to regain control of the aircraft, but nothing works. And as you realize you're down to your last moment on Earth, you decide to do the unthinkable. You let go. That's the story Reinhard Klett is here to share with us today. Let's get into it. Reinhard, thank you so much for being here on Shit Creek Survivors. If you would introduce yourself to our audience and let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. As you know, my own personal life and death story is something that has changed other people's lives, thankfully. And so I just briefly want to share it with you. It was a childhood dream of mine to become a pilot, to at least get a private pilot's license. I mean, as a kid, I was thinking about being a fighter pilot. That would be really cool. But then when I was in the Air Force as a draftee during the Cold War, I was in boot camp for a few weeks, and I said, "This environment that's just not me. I don't want to sign up for 15 years in the military just to get my pilot's license." So I said,
Right.
"Okay, I'll do my draft, and then I'll get out of there." And then it was too expensive to learn how to fly when I grew up, because in Germany it's very expensive, and in order to maintain
It's
your
an
license,
expensive hobby. It is a very expensive hobby.
very
I've tried
expensive.
it. It's
No, I mean, so much more expensive in Germany at the time, at least.
really.
And oh yeah, there was no comparison. Plus, you had to always do so many hours a year in order to maintain the license. So that was also a little bit difficult. But then I spent 4 years in California, and before I went back, a friend of mine became a flight instructor. And so that was the opportunity. I was his first student. And I was so excited. We had this program where in 1 month, they give you enough lessons. It's like a fixed fee, and they give you enough lessons to take you all the way through the check ride to get your license. And so I
Awesome.
thought that was a good deal. So I was really excited. Like on my first solo flight, your first solo flight is like 3 takeoffs and 3 landings. You just circle around the airport. In the second takeoff, when I knew I had taken off and landed a plane all by myself, I was so happy. Yes, I got this. I can fly a plane. And so a few days later, I got on my third solo flight. Now, mind you, I only had about 12 hours of flight training at the time. But I went on my third solo flight, took off from Van Nuys Airport in Southern California, heading towards Simi Valley. Now, on the way there, I was a little bit too close to the airport. We were actually in the approach of Burbank Airport there. And I was too close to the airport. I wasn't west enough, close towards the coast enough to really get to the altitude where I was. And so all of a sudden I see this American Airlines plane coming right over in front of me.
Oh my gosh.
The tower called me up and said, "Did you see this plane? Well, you were at his altitude." You were where this guy was supposed to be. I said, "I'm sorry, I'm a student pilot." And so everything was fine. But then I headed over to Simi Valley and I practiced approach to landing stall recovery. When you approach for landing, you get close to the ground and you want to make sure you don't touch down or you don't stall the plane until you touch down. The very moment you touch down, that's when you stall the plane. If you stall it before, you may not have enough room to recover and you crash. So it's important to get a feel for that. So I tried that. I was supposed to practice that at high altitude at Simi Valley. So I was rocking the boat, the plane, making sure that there was no aircraft around me. I called Burbank Tower, please advise of any approaching aircraft. I'm practicing these approach to landing stall recovery at 2,500 feet and so on. And then I prepared it. I pulled up the plane to slow it down, put out the flaps, just like the things that you do when you do an approach to landing. And so it slowed down and the stall warning horn started to go off. and the plane felt very unstable, and I knew the nose was going to drop any minute. But it didn't. The left wing dropped before the right wing, and I got into a graveyard spiral.
Oh, no.
So my heart sank. I thought these were going to be the last few seconds of my life. The earth was turning like a disc in front of me, and the instruments showed the rapid descent. I tried everything that I could think of with the controls, but nothing got me out of this graveyard spiral. I mean, it was like, going down really fast. And I was thinking of all kinds of things. I thought, oh, my parents will now have to stand at the grave of another son. And it was just, I knew it was going to be over. But then I said, okay, maybe there's something that I can do, and that is let go. So I let go of all the controls and said, God, take this plane. And in an instant, I came out into a straight and level flight.
Wow.
I had dropped 1,000 feet out of the sky and came out at about 1,500 feet above the ground. Had I held on to the controls just a few more seconds, I would have crashed the plane. That would have been it. So that really, I mean, as you can imagine, the adrenaline was like at an all-time high.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
When I got out of it, I pushed the throttle to gain altitude again and went back to the airport. To put down that plane. I didn't care soft landing or hard landing. I didn't care. I just wanted to have solid ground under my feet. And when my flight instructor asked me how it went, because he didn't see it, nobody saw it. I told him what happened. He said he freaked out. He freaked out. He said, "Well, we're not supposed to practice this because it's too dangerous. But from now on, I will practice recovery from a graveyard spiral with every student. I don't care what the flight school is telling me. I will practice that." He said you had at least a 50% chance of killing yourself.
Wow.
So
that's shocking when you talk to someone who knows more about what you've been through and they're able to highlight, you don't realize how lucky you are. And you're like,
yeah,
whoa. Yeah.
And so I got, I mean, my knees were shaking, as you can imagine. And I waited for about 3 hours. And then I got back into cockpit again. Alone. Again. Now, some people might think that's absolutely nuts. You're crazy. Why would you do that? But it was interesting. I remembered what my dad taught me in a way. We had, back in the day when you had slideshows, I had an aunt who always traveled a lot, and we dutifully watched her slides from her trips. And one Sunday afternoon, she drove home and totaled the car. She got into an accident, totaled the car. Thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt. But my dad took her to the car dealership the very next day because he did not want the fear in her of driving again to build up so much that she would quit driving.
Right.
So he did that. And I said to myself, if I don't get back in the cockpit as soon as possible, the fear will build up so much that I will probably give up getting my pilot's license. So I just did 3 takeoffs and landings and went back. I didn't try another stall, another stall practice. But yeah. And so, I carried that story with me. And I as I was sharing this story over the years, one person told me, she said, "You just ministered to me." That was in Tennessee. That's sort of their language for saying you just, gave me emotional and spiritual support or something along those lines, And I said, how could that minister to you, that story? And she said, "You just made me realize that there's something that I need to let go in my life. And I feel so relieved." And so that's when I realized it really makes a sense to share that story with people. And I shared it with people when I had opportunities to speak in church, for example, or with other people. And then one time I was invited to speak at a church retreat. And what was interesting is they wanted me to do a seminar on this topic of letting go. So they scheduled one at the beginning of the event, and then another one about a week later at the end. And so at the beginning, there were just a handful of people came into the room. And I basically just told them the story. And then I asked the question, so what is it in your life that you need to let go of? And then people started thinking, and slowly people started to give some answers and talked about things. And I said, well, why are you not letting go, or what keeps you from letting go? And people started to cry. That's when I realized I hit a nerve. And so I guess people shared that experience. And the last day, the room was packed. The room was packed. And it was something where I realized, yeah, this is really something that people need to hear. Because there's so many things that people shared with me then over the years as to what they need to let go in their lives. And it was actually at that seminar that I realized maybe I should be writing a book. Maybe I should share my story through a book. And then what we can do is I tell my story and I share some of the areas in life that people have shared with me where it's helpful to let go, where people are being held back.
Right.
And so I started writing, but then I put it on the back burner. I had a full-time job. I was very busy. We raised 2 kids, and my wife was homeschooling, and I was traveling a lot overseas travels through my work in the automotive industry. So I just put it on the back burner. There didn't seem to be an urgency. But then what happened, I lost my job at the age of 59. In the auto industry. There were some issues. I had some ethical conflicts with my boss, and so I was let go. I resisted. I stood up, or I didn't comply with some things that I felt were unethical. Anyway, so of course that was a shock, but it was then that I realized I had to start my own business. I didn't want to be subject to another toxic corporate environment or anything like that. And starting my own business is not easy, or starting your own business is not easy. There's a lot of challenges, and most people don't realize how hard of work it can be. And thankfully, I had a coach, certified high-performance coach through Brendon Burchard's program, and he really helped me to focus again and to to be more focused, to regain my confidence. Because no matter what happened when you lose your job, it affects your confidence. Because there's no have you ever seen a Hallmark card for people who lost their job? There's none. Because somehow in our society, people still feel, well, if you lost your job, there's probably something you didn't do quite right. It's to some degree, it's probably your fault, And yes, we can all contribute to it, of course, but for all kinds of other events, life-changing events, there's Hallmark cards, but not for losing your job, right?
Yeah,
so
good point.
It affects your confidence, and so this guy really helped me to build my confidence and to focus on my business. I started a real estate investment business, which we had done some of that before on the side, and it went well. But the market changed. We moved to another state, so a lot of things I needed to learn, and so he helped me a lot. But he also encouraged me to write that book. And so I decided to write the book, and I got with a publisher, with some of those people that help you with self-publishing. And I sent the scripts to several of those companies, and one of them came back and she said, well, I went to your website, and I saw that you are actually a coach, because my coach uh, told me you could become a coach, because as I was networking with other small business owners and I realized they had similar struggles than I did, then then I felt like they could use the help of a coach. And he said, "Well, you'd be a good coach. You could do coaching." And I said, "What makes you think that I'm an engineer by trade? I'm not I don't have a psychology degree or anything like that," which he did have. Um, so anyway, so he said, "You went through the process. You did the work. So, and you were a good client. That's why I think you'd be a good coach." But anyway, so he encouraged me to write that book. And the one lady that I picked, the one company that I picked, was the one who told me, "You need to flesh out your stories a little bit more. And then at the end of each chapter, you need to put a few coaching style questions. So you can market it. You can use it as a marketing tool in a way for your coach, which is important." And so I did that, and it was very quick. It was actually during COVID that I published the book. We published the book in 2020. I think it was in June of 2020. And it's funny, a friend of mine got his first book on Amazon before I ever got my first book.
That's
The print
awesome.
shops were down, and for non-essential business, they had to close, and so it was interesting. But you mentioned something to me about your story and about starting your podcast, and you said when it helps only one person, it's worthwhile. And what was interesting, I was contacted on Facebook by a woman who read my book. And she said, I talked to my pastor and showed him the book and how much it helped me. And the pastor said, "I know the guy. You should call him. You should tell him." We knew each other from some time in California. Hadn't been in touch forever, but anyway. So she read the book and she contacted me. And you know what she said? She said, "I've had a very hard life. I had a very abusive father. Then I had a very abusive first husband. And then I got a divorce from him. But then I got married again, and I had a beautiful marriage. But my second husband died of cancer. And so I've had a lot of trauma in my life." And she said, "I've had a lot of therapy and went through a lot of sessions and tried everything. I just wasn't able to let go. But after reading your book, I was finally able to let go." So that was the one person it was worth doing it for,
Yeah.
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 And most people, you never hear their story. You never know how it's affecting them. They will never let you know. You never hear about it. So if you have something to share, something meaningful and helpful to share, just put it out there. Just put it out there.
Totally agree.
As an act of service,
Yeah, because it's an act of service. It's taking what you went through, putting it in front of some other people so that they can process it, understand, and learn from it as well. So it doesn't go to waste. These stories that we tend to hide could really help a lot of people around us,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I needed it. I needed to listen to myself, after I was losing the job and I had some stress about a business deal. There were a real estate deal. There were 3 parties involved and there were some complications. And it looked like I could either, worst case scenario, I would lose $20,000. Best case scenario, I would gain $50,000. And it stressed me out. I just could not focus. I could not concentrate on my business, and it was just consuming me. And I talked to my coach about it, and he said, "Well, so you took it back, huh?" I said, "What do you mean you took it back?" He said, "Well, I know you're a person of faith. I'm sure you took it to God, but you didn't leave it there. You took it back." So he said, "You need to pray to God again and leave it there." And what was interesting too, he said, pray about it and say, okay, you want this to be fair to all parties involved. You want the outcome to be fair to all parties involved, and you want the best possible solution. we were talking, the parties were talking through lawyers already,
Mm.
even though we had a pretty good relationship before. And it was painful. But then I prayed about it and I talked to the guy, one person that I could talk to, had a good relationship with. And we decided to bury our hatches and found a solution to where actually not only did I not lose any money, I made more money in the deal than my highest expectation was. We made $80,000 in the deal into
Wow.
my pocket,
Yeah.
And that was definitely money we could use during the time, not
Yeah.
long after I lost my job. So that was one thing that I realized I need to let go myself of things that are holding me back. And talking through it with my coach, I also realized why I was worried a lot, but my wife was not worried. I've had faith in my life, but my faith muscle was not exercised a lot when it came to economic security.
Right.
Because my dad was a lawyer working for the government as a civil servant. We weren't rich. We were 6 kids, but there was always, no worries about money. And then I got my engineering degree, worked for a very solid Stuttgart-based company, who were not into hire and fire. I always got good reviews from that company, and I thought I'd never lose my job. And then when I did, I was scared. I was really scared. And my wife was not scared. My wife, she grew up when she first grew up, they were very well off. Her dad was a corporate lawyer for Mobil Oil in the Philippines. They were very well off, going to private school, chauffeur-driven Mercedes, all that kind of stuff, And then her parents divorced. Her mom went with the 6 kids to Canada, and there was a lot of economic uncertainty all of a sudden.
Right.
But she said, God always bailed us out. God always provided. Something always came up. Something always happened. So she knew that we will always have enough. So I realized, talking with my coach, my belief was, my big scare was behind the money. My fear was that we may not have enough. And my wife's belief was, yeah, we will always have enough. And then I realized, looking back, yeah, we will always have enough.
It's funny to be in those situations with someone who can have that faith, who knows that it's going to happen, and you're like, hold on, but I'm scared. And they're like, why?
Yeah. It was amazing. And it was a huge, huge blessing, because how many husbands, when they lose their job, their wives get really mad and upset and frustrated and scared and all those kinds of things. And that wasn't the case here. So that was a huge, huge, huge blessing that made all the difference. But what's interesting too is about this letting go. I have to tell you a quick story. When we moved from Tennessee to Ohio, we had a burglary, and my chainsaw was stolen. So I had to replace it. I got the same brand, a different model, a newer model from the same brand. And for the first time, I was cutting an oak tree, and it was so hard to cut that oak tree. I was revving the engine like crazy, and it was cutting very, very slowly. And then it felt like it was overheating. So I said, okay, I better stop. I'll take it back to the dealer. I took it back to the dealer, and I said, there's something wrong with this. They said, yeah, don't worry. It's under warranty. You just bought it. We'll fix it. The next day they called me back and they said, it's not under warranty. You had the brake on. I said, how could that be? My old chainsaw, when I had the brake on, it was like locked. It wouldn't move at all. But this stuff kept moving, and they said, yeah, they put this cheap band brake on it now, and if you rev the engine hard enough, it still moves a little bit. It won't cut much. And I said, okay. Well, then I realized the moral of the story is we may have the brake on somewhere, somehow in our lives. Just what you shared about the thing that you stuffed in from your childhood. And we don't even know it. We're not even aware.
Yeah.
We're not even aware what it is, what's holding us back. So for me, like when I do coaching, high performance coaching, I tell people, well, we can step on the gas as much as we want, apply all the high performance habits, burn a lot of energy. But if you still have the foot on the brake somewhere else, you just burn up energy. You're not going to make a lot of progress. So we
Right.
have to identify what is it in your life that's holding you back.
Yeah.
So take the
Yeah.
foot off the brake first, and then you can step on the gas.
Yeah. That's very interesting. And how often do we, have our foot on the gas? Nothing's happening, but we just keep the foot down and not assess, well, what's holding us back? That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, one of the things, and I was reminded of that when you shared your story, one of the chapters in the book is letting go of past guilt and shame.
Hmm.
And, guilt and shame can only serve one purpose. And that if it's a catalyst for change, where we say, okay, we messed up, we did something wrong, we are guilty, there's shame on it, and I need to change. I need to repent. I need to ask for forgiveness. I need to work on restoration, whatever it may be. But then once we have done the work, once it has served as a catalyst for change, and then we need to let it go because then it doesn't serve any purpose anymore.
Yeah.
And
That's hard.
But especially when, and that to me is the worst thing that happens is when people are are being shamed for things that they are not even responsible for.
Right. Yeah.
Especially when you do that to children. That is such evil, And what is interesting to me too is because of the shame, even if we are not responsible for it, we often don't share it with people because we think it puts a blemish on us, or people think we're weird, or it must have had a negative psychological effect or whatever. It was interesting. A friend of mine, he was raped by policemen in the Middle East as a teenager. And he never told anybody about it. Not his parents, nobody, ever. Until he was in a meeting. He was a sales executive of a company, and there were other sales executives in the meeting. And he shared it with them in that meeting. And it blew him away. Every single one person in that room was sexually abused at some point in their lives.
Wow.
But now, because he shared, they could open up.
Mm. Yeah.
And it reminded me of my younger brother. He was 21 years old when he took his life. He was manic depressant, and he was in a very bad, low stage for a long time. And he took his life. He was actually in a psychiatric clinic. But it was amazing how many people, when that happened, how many people came out of the woodworks and shared about mental health issues in their families that they were dealing with, that they were too ashamed, too embarrassed to talk about to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, not funny really, but interesting. My grandfather took his own life. What happened is he was a doctor, and at the age of 85, he started to have first signs of dementia, and he knew where that was heading, and he didn't want anybody to deal with this. So he just gave himself an overdose legally. I mean, he did it in such a way that was clear that it was suicide. There was no, police came and everything, but there was no external, person involved. So, but because he had a little stroke before, uh, the official story of the family that the family put out was he had another stroke.
Okay.
Several years later, my sister talked to a friend, and somehow this situation came up, and her friend told her that, yeah, your grandfather took his life too, not just your brother. And she said, how did you know? Her friend said, everybody knew. Our family was the only one who didn't know that everybody knew.
Wow.
So what's the point in hiding?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why we do it, because it traps us, whatever we're in. As soon as we decide I'm not sharing this with anyone, you're limited to what you know. You're limited to what you can access. And man, if just thinking about that as like an alcoholic, if I could think my way out of it, I would have done it a long time ago. So I definitely needed help. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like it's interesting that we think we're different. We don't want people to find out. So we hide ourselves, which traps us in the place that we're at compared to being able to move forward. And a lot of times too, I get, it's odd that we will almost honor other people's feelings about us or perceived feelings about us over our own. Do you understand what I'm trying to say there? That we will, if like at my worst, when I was very much in a victimhood, you didn't have to say anything to me. I was thinking for you. I was thinking, you're thinking I'm a pile of trash. So every time that would happen, I was causing real emotions to happen in my brain, which were just repetitive over and over and over and over. And I just, you get caught in that story. And I was so concerned about what other people thought about me, it almost like froze me in place. The only time that it actually changed for me was then, like you just said, why am I thinking for people who aren't helping me? Why am I, coming up with these stories? Because the only thing that's happening is it's hurting me. And the truth is, I'm the only one responsible to pick myself up at the end of the day. Although I was very much a victim and I thought someone else should come save me, the only time something changed is when I was like, okay, well, turns out it's my responsibility and nobody else's. And that's when I was able to take self-accountability and say, nothing will change unless I take a step. And then you take a step and no one says anything. You're like, oh, they weren't watching me, waiting to call out how I stumbled or failed. And then you take your next step. You're like, oh, this isn't so hard. And then you kind of keep moving. Obviously, you run into walls along the way, but it's funny how we will take on other people's opinions of us as true compared to saying, no, that's not who I am. I will not quit and I will keep going. It was just interesting the way you were saying it. I like it.
Yeah. What I find, I mean, there is fear behind not opening up, because it doesn't feel safe. I mean, when I was in the corporate world, and I was in job interviews, and even when I had the job, I would generally not share with people that my younger brother took his life and that he was manic depressant, because I did not want people to think that, a lot of people think, oh, that's all genetic. And, your grandfather took his life, your brother took his life, you must have a propensity in that area. And who wants to hire an engineer with mental health issues, potentially?
Right. Oh,
So,
yeah, I see what you're saying. So if you
so
have
that
two
was the
people
fear.
standing next to one another, they're as qualified as engineers, but one person says, I got this suicidal ideation in my family, and the other person says no, they might pick the person who says no, just because it
Right,
eliminates. I see what you're
right,
saying for sure.
right. And that's in general, we are afraid to show weakness. We are afraid to show vulnerability. What I have, and you have probably heard from Brené Brown. She talks about that in a TEDx talk about showing vulnerability. And it was interesting. I picked up on that a little bit when I did another seminar just 2 or 3 years ago. at another church event. And so I briefly told the story, and then I asked them what they need to let go of. And I said, well, people were reluctant to raise their hands. And then I said, well, has anybody ever had any worries around money? And then almost every hand went up.
Yeah.
And then I asked, so what is it specifically? And then people were sharing reluctantly. They were sharing. And then I said, okay, at the end, after people were sharing, I said, well, the fact that they shared what was going on in their lives, did that turn you off to them? Or did that endear you to them? Do you feel more connected now, or do you feel like rejected? And they felt like, yeah, we feel more connected now. Now that because if you don't show vulnerability, and if you're being fake, there's no connection to fake relationships, no real deep connection, you know. And so that's when I realized connection is only possible. Strong heart-to-heart connection is only possible when we expose our vulnerability. And the funny thing is, we don't expose our vulnerabilities for fear of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And so we become lonely because we're not connecting with people.
Yeah, we isolate. Yeah.
We isolate. We do just the opposite of what helps us to not to be lonely.
Yeah. It's like we keep repeating the cycle, you know, we just keep putting nails in the coffin. Yeah, I can relate. It's a weird thing that we do to ourselves. Yeah. And the power we give other people, even the idea, if they knew this about me, they will think this, you know? And the question is, why does that matter? Or is that true? And like you just demonstrated, like, are you more endeared to the person who just shared their soul with you? Or are you more, you know, pushed away by that? And the truth is you're more connected to that person because they just sliced off a piece of themselves and shared it with you, which makes you, I don't know. It's kind of like an honor when someone really kind of puts some heavy info on you. You're like, wow, I can't believe you're telling me this. I really appreciate you trusting me with this. You know what I mean? It like connects you more than anything, especially if they're your friend. Now, if the person across from you does point at you and say, you're stupid, you're broken, I can't believe you do that, that's not your friend.
Yeah, right.
That might be a bummer, but at least you know right then and there that person's not your friend, and that's okay. You know what I mean? We spend our whole lives kind of running into people as we travel through this universe, travel through this earth, you know, and sometimes we get to spend long periods of time with them, and sometimes it's very brief. You know, it doesn't mean it was a bad thing, the time that you spent together. It wasn't a waste of time when you find out that maybe you were not as connected to this person as you thought because you guys did have a relationship. I have a tough time picking me. You know what I mean? I have a tough time sometimes being like, I don't know.
Is it about setting boundaries?
Not setting boundaries, but for some reason, and I think it's a byproduct of when you're a little kid and you think literally like your safety's at stake, like someone might get rid of you. You get really good at reading the room, wanting people to be happy, because if they're happy, you know, everyone's happy. And yeah, that skews you away from concentrating on your needs. You're worried about other people. So, and once everyone else is okay, then you can come back around and then make sure that you're okay, because now it's a safe environment to do it. Everyone's happy, everyone's good to go. And I'm just coming to terms with that. Like, I don't need to do that. Like, I don't need to wait. I don't need to evaluate someone else's opinion of me as much as I do. Yeah. I don't have to prove it wrong. I just need to be me.
But you know what's interesting? You said that doesn't serve you, but it doesn't serve the other person either.
Ooh, yeah.
Because there's a difference between what pleases somebody in the moment and what serves somebody. And you know yourself what has pleased you at times if somebody else gave you another bottle. but it didn't serve you,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And so I have had a sort of interesting story over the last um, year and a half or so. Uh, I was on a trip to Kenya, and I was introduced to an orphan, to a young lady who was about to graduate from university
Okay.
as a phys ed and math teacher. And the lady that introduced me, she's in her 80s. She had sort of helped her get through university and sort of taken her under her wings. And she asked me whether I can mentor her a little bit. And we talked. And she said, I'm very much into the outdoors and I love swimming and hiking and all those kinds of things. I've hiked Mount Kenya a couple of times and I just love to do that stuff. And I said, are you sure you want to be in a classroom? You know? And I said, well, there's people who have these businesses that do outdoor activities for corporations, team building stuff, and so on. Is that something you'd be interested in? And she said, yeah, I'd love that. Long story short, I, introduced her to people, connected her with people. She got an internship in Zimbabwe with somebody who does that, and loved it. And I was asked to mentor her and coach her. And we did that, on Zoom. And when I first met her, I told my wife, I said, I was so impressed with her that I said, I wish she was our daughter. And then after mentoring her for a few months, she told me during a call, I feel like I found a father.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And guess what? She told me we need to go up to Mount Kenya together. Second highest mountain in Africa. And she said, you can do it. You can do it. And so we did that this February. Now,
Nice.
It was very, very interesting. It was quite the adventure going up there. And we had our guides and we had our people that carried stuff and so on. And on the way up, we were fine. I mean, it was exhausting, but we were okay. And on the way down, like on the third day was on the way down, I struggled the last hour. I was like aching and hurting. And, when you go down steep steps and she was worried about me. She was very protective and concerned about my safety. And she told the guide, she said, I don't want to lose another father. And so that is something where you think, and what was interesting, and I tell you the story because during our sort of mentoring and coaching sessions, I didn't always tell her what she wanted to hear. One time she was laughing and I said, Sharon, why are you laughing? This is not funny. And it hit her like, nobody talks to me like this. Nobody,
Right.
And I could hang up right now, if I didn't want to hear that. But that was a switch for her where she said, okay, he tells me what I need to hear.
Yeah. And I trust him. Yeah.
And I trust that, And so that's what we have to always keep in mind is what we're saying to people or what we're doing for people. Is it pleasing them in the moment, or is it really serving them?
Yeah.
And that can sometimes help us maybe to get a little bit over the people-pleasing desire because we think it's the nice thing to do when it's really not the loving thing to do.
Right.
I mean, it was funny when she said, I feel like I found a father. I was a little worried for a couple of days. I was thinking, oh, what does that mean now? At some point, do I have to pay for an extensive African wedding or something? Or am I going to get some cows or whatever for my daughter, so to speak? But then it just before our next call, it just was so clear in my mind. I felt like the Spirit told me this. The only question I asked, what would love do? Not to worry about traditions or customs or whatever. What would be the loving thing to do? Whatever situation comes up, you know. And if we make that the guide, and then I also find that when it comes to worrying about what other people think, there's something that I have found when I came to America that more so than anywhere else of what I have seen, where pride is treated almost like a virtue, you know. And I was wondering, well, I mean, I read my Bible, and you read it from Genesis through Revelation, and there's no place where it says pride is a good thing. And I
Right.
was, and so where does this idea come from that even in Christian circles, people talk about pride? And I actually heard a sermon, somebody said, oh, I have good pride, I love my tomatoes. I love my grandchildren. I love these, and I'm proud of this, and I'm proud of that, as opposed to some other pride people. You probably can
Yeah.
guess what he was referring to.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, where in the world does that come from? And then I checked the dictionary, and I realized that there is positive synonyms in the dictionary for pride, like self-esteem or confidence and things like that. And I said, that's interesting. That really muddies the water. That really muddies the water because, for example, if I tell my child, I'm proud of you, what am I conveying? This the child and thinking, oh, it's okay to be proud. My dad's proud of me, so it's okay to be proud. So it's confusing. And I'm thinking, if the language is not clear, if one word can mean so many different contradicting things, that's confusing. Then the thinking is not clear. And so I said, we need to use language that makes it clear what we mean. And there's biblical examples. I mean, God said, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. So if that's the case, we say, I'm well pleased, instead of you make me proud,
Yeah. You're right. It can actually turn into a trap too. Because if you want God to be proud of you, sometimes you can turn that into acts, like I need to be doing certain stuff for God to be proud of me, when that's not always the case. He's proud of you anyways. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So
yeah, well, he's pleased with you,
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, in my mind, the distinction I make is this. Confidence comes from having a relationship with God, striving to please Him, acting with integrity. That's where confidence comes from. There's a scripture where it says, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, not the rich man in his riches, in the mighty in his might, and all those things, but let him who glories glory in this, that he knows me and sort of has a relationship. I'm paraphrasing. So that's when you have confidence. And if we don't have that relationship with God, and we don't have the confidence that is based on that relationship, there's a hole in our hearts.
Yeah.
And we fill that hole with what I call Satan's counterfeit of confidence, which is pride. Because pride is focused on impressing people.
Yeah.
Confidence is focused on pleasing God.
I like that. Yeah. That kind of unmuddies the waters. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it makes it more clear.
It does.
Because it helps me to be on guard against it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to be like, I ran into this person yesterday on a group call, Zoom call, and it was the first time I was introduced to the guy. He mentioned his name to the group, and I sort of sent him a text, and he said, "Oh, my son worked for the company that he worked for in the IT department." This was an IT guy, and then he texts back, Oh, yeah. I was wondering when I saw your last name that, well, is he related to this guy that I know from work? Yeah, and he said he is one of the brightest minds in the young minds that I've encountered in working for this company, or something along those lines. Now that can really swell you up quickly, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
hear that about your son. You have to be very careful, you know, that
yeah.
you're grateful that your son has turned out well. You're grateful about it and you're pleased with it, but it's really um it's no reason to be proud about it,
I hear you.
you know.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. Yeah, and it is something you have to be on guard for on a daily basis, you know what I mean? Because you can get inflated too much and, eventually that bubble will pop by not much either too. Since you've inflated yourself up, it tends to suck back down as soon as it gets popped. So you're
Right,
doing
right.
more of this, instead of, because I find that the closer I am with God, the more my walk is steady, like
Hmm.
level. I mean, yes, there's up and downs, but if the classic is like when Cameron's in control, life goes this way. When I hit the bottom and I go, God, I'm an idiot. I need help. It goes like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm with you. It's like that's such a cool way of saying it, that confidence is walking with God because you know what you're supposed to be doing and you're choosing to make the right choice one step at a time. And as you
Right.
do that, you build confidence. A lot of times I found, like, even with sobriety, like, I did things that I knew that I couldn't do alone. So it was almost a miracle I was able to do them. And then basically being like, God, thank you so much. Like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That.
And it's what in high performance coaching, one of the high performance habits is having higher levels of energy. That's
Mhm.
physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. And spiritual energy goes up when you act with confidence, when you act with integrity. Then you have
Mhm.
a higher level of spiritual energy. We know, and you know that from your own experience, when you know you've done something wrong or had the bad attitude or wrong attitude or whatever, your spiritual energy is not the same.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
affects you, it affects everything else. They're also connected: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. They're so connected. They all go up
Yeah.
and down together pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Well, I sure have learned a lot. This has been such a great discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, being vulnerable with us. It helps. And like we said before, if we can help one person, that's all that really matters. If you had an opportunity to talk to the person who's sitting in their shit creek right now and they're not sure if they even want to make it to tomorrow, what kind of words would you give that person to kind of keep on going?
Um, well, just acknowledge the situation you're in and surrender. Surrender. You know, Tell God, I need help. I can't do this by myself. But then act. Then be confident that if you sincerely seek God, He will help you. He will get you through this.
100%.
He
100%.
will get you through this. And chances are, when you're so down, that there's just like when my false belief was that I may not have enough, when we had, I lost my job and all this. It was a false belief. So when
Mhm.
you feel an oppressive emotion like that, ask yourself, what is the underlying belief, the underlying false or limiting belief that I
Yeah.
carry with me, and let go of that belief.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Because then you will, and replace it with a true belief. And the true belief is that you can make it. You can't make it on your own, but your responsibility is to to deal with it in the best possible way and seek the help that you need.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the hardest step to take, is just stepping into, I need help, and finding the people and then getting to the first meeting. Once that gets done, I'm not even talking about AA, like therapy, doctor, whatever it may be, get to the first meeting and you start getting a little momentum. The rock starts moving a little bit. So the next time you touch it, it's not as tough. And the next time you touch it, because you're getting used to it, you're acclimating, it's not easy to sit down suddenly and be like, and just bare your soul to someone, it usually comes with bits, like you've got one real kind of hard thing and you share that little bit. And eventually you realize it's part of a longer story and it all kind of connects. And it's actually, and it's where we learn everything along that road, falling,
Right,
getting back
right.
up, just like you
And,
did with
and
the plane.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like to think of it like a three-legged stool. You probably
Hmm.
heard about cognitive behavioral therapy. There's action, there is feeling, and then there's thought. And think
Hmm.
of it like a three-legged stool. You can take action without always feeling like taking the action. But when you take action, it affects the way you feel. It affects the way you think about something. Also, when you change your thoughts, you replace your false and limiting beliefs. You change your thoughts. It affects your emotions. They all affect each other, but with working on each of them at the same time, or in parallel, so to speak, it helps raise the whole thing up.
Yeah. Man, you have given us a lot of great information. Thank you so much, Reinhard. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Cameron. I really appreciate the opportunity. It was great.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Shit Creek Survivors. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. And if you know someone who could use this message, share the episode with them. Remember, whatever shit creek you're in, you don't have to navigate it alone. We'll see you next week.